Welcome to the U.S. Army's Command and General Staff School, and welcome to Joint Talks, where we continue to try to close the gap and help you make sense of abstract concepts between what you may have read in Joint Doctrine and the application of those materials. The goal of this video and other videos like this is the same, which is to try to help you make more meaningful contributions to joint planning in your future assignments. I am Robert Sherrill. I'm an assistant professor here at the school, and today we have a special guest. We have Dr. Glen Downing. Dr. Downing is a retired Air Force colonel. He's a former SAMS grad, and he's also an associate professor in the Department of Joint, Interagency, and Multinational Operations. And he's joined us this morning to help us have a discussion on understanding the operational environment systems thinking. Dr. Downing, it's great to have you here this morning. Thanks for taking the time to share your expertise with our viewing audience. So let me just go ahead and get started. And since we're talking systems thinking, but I guess the biggest question for us is, why is systems thinking important?
First of all, thanks for having me, Mr. Sherrill. I'm very excited to be here and excited to help people learn more about systems thinking. So the real question, why systems thinking? Systems thinking is really a disciplined approach to thinking. And if a commander and their staff apply systems thinking to a problem, they will come up with better courses of action. They will come up with better plans because they have a deeper, broader, more thorough understanding of the situation and environment that they're operating in.
So it's really a disciplined approach to thinking. This is kind of the broad context of it. That's
correct.
Great. So of course I asked you the why. So the next punchline is going to be, what is systems thinking? If you can explain that, that would be really helpful.
Well, it's a tough explanation because the what is very individualized. There's literally tens or hundreds of definitions. There's tens and hundreds of types of systems. So it can become very specific to your application. But our application is really operational planning. And the Army Research Institute has done a lot of work to take the best of what's in academia, take the best of what's in the corporate world, and come up with an Army definition of systems thinking. And basically that definition is, it's a cognitive approach to thinking where you take a holistic perspective of a system to try to identify interrelationships and emergent properties between elements. So if you think critically about that definition, there's 5 parts to it, or 5 dimensions to it. So one of the things I talked about was elements. And so when you're looking at a system, one of the first things you want to do is identify those elements. An example I use is a family. So we all come from a family, and all our families are different. So we want to look at what are the elements of that. In my immediate family, I have a wife. And so the immediate elements are myself as the husband, my wife, and we have 2 adult children, both sons.
Okay.
Then you want to look at those interrelationships, or the relationships between those different elements. So my wife and I have a relationship, and actually multiple relationships. We have a relationship as a marriage. We also have a relationship as parents, and even more of like a business relationship as heads of household or trying to run a household, right? And then we have relationships with our sons, and we each have slightly different relationships with our sons.
Right, yeah. And
then they have relationships with each other, and sometimes it's us against them, right? So all those dynamics kind of interplay. And so that's the elements and the relationships. Now they're shifting perspectives. So when we're making a decision, you have to sometimes take the other person's perspective or another element's perspective. Or if you think of a plan, okay, I put together a plan. Part of putting that together was maybe the enemy course of action, developing an enemy course of action for me to plan against. That's taking the enemy commander's perspective of the system that you're in. Holistic perspective was that 4th dimension. That sometimes is the hard piece. That's being able to step back and look at the big picture.
Right.
And look at that system in totality. So my family that I described, that's kind of easy to do when you sit there and just look at 4 people and how they relate to each other. But now put that family in a larger environment. So how do we fit with our extended family? How do we fit with our community? How do we fit with the schools? How do we fit with whatever
churches,
our religious
your
practice?
businesses, everything, right?
Absolutely. And then there's emergent properties, or put in real simple language, change.
Okay.
So my oldest son got married. So now I have a daughter-in-law. And that
of course.
adds new dynamics, and it
The
alters
new
the
family comes
system.
in, yeah.
Absolutely. So those relationships all change slightly, and you're building new relationships with your daughter-in-law as you go forward. So all those are all the things that are wrapped up in that definition of systems.
That's awesome. There's a couple things. So one, a disciplined approach to thinking is kind of what I'm taking away. The other thing that I've seen in joint doctrine, I think you use slightly different terms, but I've seen like the actor node analysis, where you're using kind of an element, and it seems like this relationship thing, but that's regardless, right? The element could be a whole host of things. It could be a system of, like, it could be like a car system, right? The body can be a system. You're using people with the actor relationship analysis. That's really helpful. On that, one of the things that I've seen in doctrine that can be a little fuzzy, maybe, is this. Sometimes we'll refer to it as systems thinking. Sometimes we refer to it as systems perspective. In your opinion, is there any difference, or is it just a nuance of words?
To some extent, it's a nuance. It's a cue, I think, toward using that holistic perspective.
Okay.
But if you continue reading in the doctrine, in probably Joint Pub 3, Joint Pub 5, and the JIPO guide are the ones that cover it most thoroughly at the joint level. It talks about the operational environment. It encourages us to look at political systems in the environment, to look at military systems, economic systems, social systems, infrastructure systems, information systems.
Right.
Or PMESI, maybe.
That's right. That's exactly right, yeah. Which is a framework in JP50, right?
It
the
is.
Joint planning. It helps us understand. Again, it's a framework to apply systems thinking. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But there's an implication there that there's all these systems, and the operational environment in total, if you take that holistic view of it, is a system of systems.
Okay.
And taking that systems perspective, looking at them as a system of systems and in a holistic manner, we can begin to identify patterns, and we can begin to identify critical relationships and even critical elements within that system of systems, which informs our course of action development later, and it gives us a shared understanding of that environment.
Wow. That's great. That's covered a lot of really good ground there. I don't think you get that from the graphic from JP50 that shows kind of that link node analysis, what you just described. That was really helpful. One of the things our officers sometimes struggle with is conceptual planning or operational art, just because of its ambiguous nature. Is there something, can you kind of explain how they apply this systems thinking and why that's so important in that phase of planning?
Yeah, because it's a tool that lets you deal with the ambiguity. You can begin to look at the component parts, build them up piece by piece, and again, look at how they relate to each other and how they influence the environment. So if you think of VUCA, volatile, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, is even what you asked. It's a wonderful tool to deal with that VUCA environment.
Which is really explains our international system. Is that right?
Correct.
The VUCA is kind of what we are dealing with as military planners, right? They're going to be dealing at that operational, potentially at that national level of thinking, right? And there's differences of complexity based on what you're dealing with, right? That's helped us to understand that. One of the things that comes out of conceptual planning or operational art is we use operational design. And for our audience, we talked about this in a previous video. Operational design is nothing more than an analytical framework to apply operational art. It's a way we think about this conceptual world, and we use systems thinking to help us understand it. In that, one of the output products of operational design is understanding the operational environment. And sometimes I'll refer to that as the operational frame. Can you explain this, particularly for a new planner, how one does this? Because it's kind of murky in JP of how you start and do that.
Yeah. That PMESI tool is a great start. Okay. So again, go back and for the problem that you have, or really for the situation that you're in, let's call it a situation for now. For that situation you're in, look at the bigger environment and think about what are the political systems at play. They may be specific politicians, they may be countries and their relationships, treaties,
political
alliances.
Parties, yeah.
Absolutely.
Domestic versus international. I mean, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And how they all work together. You know, are they polarized, or are they close to each other? Is there friction in those relationships, or are they working together to create something? You can do the same with those military systems, social systems, and so on. And so as you build out all these little systems, well, they're not little, they're actually pretty big.
Right, sure.
But now you want to look at what's the situation, what am I being asked to do, and what portions of these are most relevant to my plan, and then how do they all work together? And then what I'm really looking for is what's keeping me from getting to where I want. Why can I not shape this environment to look like what I want, an end state, right? And once you can identify the pieces in the system that are preventing you from getting to that end state or that future operating environment you envision, you found your problem. And the systems thinking gives you that logical process to go through to do that, understand your current environment, your future environment, and identify the obstacles of making that transition.
That's awesome. So what you're really helping to clarify is just something that we had talked about in a previous video, is this, again, within this environment, what we're looking at is a desired frame or desired environment that we think is achievable, right? There's this current environment, and the way you described it, if I understood you correctly, is probably one of the best ways to start is just use PMESI that's out of JP500, right? Start there, understand that you have these different systems, but they're interrelated, and then that's going to help you deduct, I guess, or achieve what is the problem. What is keeping me from my current state to achieve my desired state? Again, we're really talking about military power, right? So, and then we're going to apply military power to the system to hopefully move us the direction we want to go. And that leads us to the operational approach, right? Correct. Which is this, again, my term, I use a broad theory of action of how we're going to solve the problem and achieve the desired end state that we want. That's very helpful. That leads us to some other things too about problem framing, but probably don't have time to get into that now, but all the different elements that help us get to that. Really, Dr. Downing, that was fantastic. Is there anything else that you can think of on systems thinking that you think would be relevant for our viewing audience, particularly as new planners or as young planners?
Well, I think the biggest one is learn more about systems thinking and practice systems thinking. Yeah. You can start with just this simple pieces, things that you already know. So if you're an aviator, your aircraft is full of systems. If you're a vehicle operator, your vehicle's full of systems, right? Or even look at your family like I did and step through those dimensions. But more importantly then, there are lots of wonderful tools. Some are military tools, some are corporate or academic tools to help you develop your systems thinking and your systems thinking processes. And the more you practice, the better you're going to get at it. And it's not something that you can just, all of a sudden, I'm a senior officer, I'm a commander, now I want to apply systems thinking. You want to start as a junior officer and develop that throughout your career. We're talking mainly to make career officers, field grade officers. It's not too late to start.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, I want to thank you again for your time, your expertise, and coming on the air to help us make sense of a concept that tends to be a little bit difficult for a lot of people to gather. Your viewing audience here is from around the world, and to our viewers out there, we want to say thank you for watching us today. We hope that this is helpful for you, and we look forward to making more videos for you in the future to help to make your journey in joint planning better. Thanks so much.